You ever get that feeling something's just off? Like when a fairy tale starts so perfectly it almost has to go wrong? That's where we are right now with Kimi Antonelli. Just a few days ago, this kid, this Italian prodigy, finally made it. His first podium in Formula One, third place in Canada, a moment that was supposed to launch his legacy. And now, it might all be ripped away from him, not because he was too aggressive, not because he made a bad move, but because of something that might not even have been his fault. And the worst part? Almost nobody is talking about it. This could blow up, not just for Antonelli, not just for Mercedes. We're talking a possible FIA scandal, a ripple effect touching rivals like Oscar Piastri, and a very real risk of an internal war within Mercedes if this spirals out of control. So what happened? Let's rewind to those final laps in Montreal. Antonelli crosses the line in third, smiling, celebrating. The team erupts. He does the interviews, climbs the podium, soaks in the moment. But during those final meters, the safety car came out, and with it, a whole different game began. According to the FIA, multiple drivers may have violated safety car protocol. Antonelli's name is on that list, so are Leclerc, Piastri, Sainz, Gasly, Stroll. But what exactly is the infraction? Under safety car, you're not allowed to overtake, you can't make abrupt changes in speed, and you've got to stay within a specific time delta. Basically, everything has to stay frozen in place. But here's the thing, on the broadcast, nothing obvious. No crazy overtake, no slingshot move, nothing that stands out. So why is Antonelli under investigation? Telemetry and GPS data, apparently. They suggest he may have closed the gap too fast, or maybe even technically overtook. But again, we're talking about milliseconds, micro movements. And this is where the frustration begins, because we've seen the FIA fumble these moments before. Remember Tsunoda in Monaco? A penalty based on a totally subjective read. Or those infamous post-race decisions that come hours later after the world has already celebrated. This is becoming a pattern, a dangerous one. Antonelli, at the time of recording, hasn't even been summoned to the stewards. That's rare. Usually if there's an infraction that might affect the podium, they act fast. But this time, silence, which raises a whole new set of questions. Are they trying to protect Mercedes? Are they waiting for things to cool off before quietly handing out a penalty, hoping nobody makes a fuss? Meanwhile, the Mercedes camp is juggling another grenade. George Russell and Max Verstappen. Yeah, you heard that right. These two have a history, not a friendly one. From wheel-to-wheel clashes in Qatar to close calls in Spain, the tension has been building. And then, out of nowhere, Verstappen compliments Russell. Not sarcastically, genuinely. "You had a really good start," he said in the cool-down room after Canada. On the surface, maybe it's nothing, but behind the scenes, that phrase set off sirens. Because these two don't compliment each other, not without motive. And this comes on the exact same weekend that Russell breaks Red Bull's streak. He takes pole with a lap some are comparing to Niki Lauda. Holds off Verstappen on pace, wins the race. And just like that, Mercedes is back in the conversation, back in the hunt. So now you've got Max throwing out compliments, Toto Wolff making subtle jabs at Red Bull, and Max, despite being under contract until 2028, he's been more open than ever about discontent behind the scenes. The internal politics at Red Bull, Horner versus Marco, the future of the team, the pressure from Ford, it's all piling up. And George Russell might just be the wild card Mercedes is quietly preparing to lead the next chapter. Back to Canada, though. The drama didn't stop with Antonelli or Russell, because over at McLaren, things imploded. Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, two rising stars, two potential world champions, and in the final laps of Montreal, they collided. Norris took the blame immediately. "I was stupid," but if you listened closely, you could tell it wasn't that simple. The radio messages were weirdly calm. No immediate reprimand, no panic, just silence. And that silence, that's when you know something's wrong. Because a team that's 100% behind one driver responds fast. They make it clear who's right, who's wrong. But McLaren didn't. Why? Because they don't know who to back. Because Norris and Piastri are too close. In talent, in status, in potential. And if they don't figure that out soon, they're going to repeat history. Think back to 2011. Button versus Hamilton. Same team, same indecision, no clear number one. What happened? Internal chaos, missed opportunities, no championships. That's where McLaren is right now. They have to choose. Either they let them race and risk more collisions, or they put one driver in the priority seat. But if they wait too long, they're done, because when two teammates are fighting for the same turf, every qualifying becomes a war. Every pit stop becomes a political move. And the moment one feels slightly favored, it's over. Look at what happened with Mercedes, Hamilton and Rosberg, Red Bull, Verstappen and Ricciardo. Every time a team delayed the tough call, they paid the price. And speaking of Hamilton, let's talk Ferrari. Lewis is fighting a very different kind of war right now. Not against a teammate, not even against rivals, but against his own engineers. Because somehow, one of the greatest drivers in the history of this sport is having to beg for updates at Ferrari. Think about that for a second. This is Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, one of the most adaptive, technically brilliant minds the sport has ever seen. And yet, he's stuck driving a car that doesn't suit him, and a team that doesn't want to change. His words? I'm constantly challenging the way Ferrari works. And what's their answer? We've always done it this way. You can almost hear the frustration. Hamilton switched to Ferrari for one reason, to win again, to add another chapter to an already legendary career. But the reality of the SF25 has been brutal. Every weekend feels like a fight, not just on track, but inside the garage, because he's having to convince people to think outside the box, to take risks, to move past tradition. And what makes it even worse? Leclerc is thriving. Yep, statistically, Leclerc is outperforming Hamilton across the board. More points, more podiums, more consistency. Canada was only the 3rd time all year Lewis qualified ahead of him. That's it. And whether people want to admit it or not, it raises a hard question. Has Ferrari already picked their favorite? Hamilton's been clear. We need a car that can win next year. That's the priority. Which tells you everything. He's not just frustrated with this season. He's worried the team has already shifted focus to 2026, the new regulations, the next era. And in that context, 2025 might be another write-off. It's the silent war nobody wants to talk about. And it's happening in the most famous team in Formula One history. So here we are. Kimi Antonelli might lose his first F1 podium over a technicality that nobody can even see. George Russell's getting strange compliments from Max Verstappen just as he reasserts himself as Mercedes' future. McLaren's unity is cracking under the weight of too much talent and too few decisions. And Lewis Hamilton? He's deep in the trenches at Ferrari, trying to drag a giant into the modern age one meeting at a time. This is what makes Formula One so brutal, so fascinating, so real. You think it's just about speed and lap times and shiny trophies? Nah, it's politics, psychology, power struggles behind closed doors. That's what really shapes this sport. And right now, we're watching it all unfold.